Welcome to the Intimacy Lab. I'm Michelle Renee, an intimacy guide, surrogate partner, and professional cuddler. We're here to talk about intimacy in a much broader view than what you're probably thinking. Most people think about intimacy as sex. We're going to break that apart here. Welcome to the lab. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to have this conversation today because I have my San Diego wife with me. So this podcast, my hope is that it ends up being a cast of characters that kind of circle through, and they're the people that are in my real life and people that I have, super awesome conversation with, or I do super awesome things with. And Sara is one of those crossovers that all the awesomeness happens around. And so, Sara is joining us to talk about pussy confidence because that's something that we bonded over and something that we offer to our community here in San Diego as a workshop around this. So let me give you a quick idea of who Sara Glass is, and she'll probably giggle because that's what she does. But I met Sara, I think in 2017 is my best estimate. My partner was here in San Diego getting involved in the kink community, and there's all these great opportunities. And I feel like when you're entering the kink community, one of the highest honors is when you get invited to people's house parties. And so it's like you've hit the inner circles and they trust you to come into their home. And he went to this game night at Sara's house. And the next morning I got pictures of him tied up in like a hog tie in the living room, which would one day become my living room because I ended up living in that house. But so I met Sara because Sara met Paul first, or met Paul before she met me. And in one of those things where Paul messages me the next morning and says, "I can't wait for you to meet Princess Sara." And I was like, "Oh shit, she's a princess. This woman's going to be horrible to deal with." And instead, I came out the next visit, and there was another one of these game nights at Sara's house. And so I got to go and meet Sara, and we instantly bonded over our love of like wanting to help women love their vulvas.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like throwing my weight around of like, I worked with Betty Dodson, and I think like made a plan that night that we were going to teach women to love their vulvas. And we've been off and running ever since. So I joke that Paul caught Sara and I kept Sara. And Paul is still fine. Paul can still join us, but I feel like we turned into something different. And so I love my friendship with Sara. So I was supposed to introduce Sara, and here I'm just talking about how I met Sara. Sara is an artist. She's a painter. She's, I think, an artist with everything she does. She does touch work and some rope tying and impact. You're like a top and a bottom. You're like I don't know. You just move through the world in a way that is like, I give no shits and I take no shit.
Yeah, learn great.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I always think of Sara as incredibly inspiring and somebody who I wish I was in my 30s, like in my early 30s. But I would have never been married and able to sustain that kind of um I call it like leaving my head in the sand. I couldn't have left my head in the sand if I had a Sara in my life back then.
Oh,
Yeah. So thanks for coming on to talk about this thing that we love, which is our pussies.
they're the best.
Yeah. So how, like, I think what might be important for people to know is like how we got there ourselves. Like, did you always love your cunt, Sara? Was that a thing?
Oh no! Oh my gosh, no. Oh, okay. So my childhood was horrible. There's a lot of abuse and neglect, and my mom always had strangers over, and there was constantly touch. That was done to my body that was not consensual. I really didn't uh, understand the word no. It wasn't really part of my vocabulary till later on. I just did things and sucked it up to get through it as a child. And then as I grew up, my primary partners wanted me to be monogamous. They wanted me to dress certain ways. They wanted me to only play with them when they asked. It wasn't something that I was allowed to initiate. It was very much like I was used as a meat sack and I kind of just sucked it up. Sex was really painful. Um, Everything just hurt all the time. And I just didn't know how to say no yet. And then as I get older, fast forward to when I'm 25, I found cuddle parties and I was able to say yes to things, but more importantly, I was able to say no, and people said thank you. They were People respected my no. And then the first like 3, 4, 5 cuddle parties I went to, I was just like, okay, everyone ask me questions. I just want to say no. I just want to say no. And I did. I was like, no, 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 no. And I loved it. Everybody was like, thank you. There was no coercion. There was no like, come on, baby. There was none of that. And then, and I started doing a lot of photo shoots that included my vulva, and I learned how to love her a little bit more. And I did, at one point, I did go to a surgeon to change the shape of my vulva because my lips are big on the inside. And I thought everyone was supposed to have little skinny lips, and they're not. And on my way out, the receptionist was kind enough to encourage me to do the mirror challenge, which was stare at your pussy in the mirror for 30 days. You can touch her, you can play with her. There's no intention of getting off, just kind of look at her beauty. And that helped me also to really learn how to build a relationship with my vulva. So with being able to say no and building this small relationship and taking a lot of pictures of what she looked like because I didn't really know because our vulvas are between our legs. I really started to fall in love with my vulva and I wanted to share these skills with other people because once I started to love my vulva, appreciate her for who she is, and as a part of who I am, and it gave me a great sense of power in my life that I never had before and confidence that I never had before. And it's beautiful and it's rewarding and I'm super thankful to have found this at a younger age, you know.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
wanna share this with all the vulva owners.
I remember as a kid being really curious about especially my labia. Like, I do think I pulled a mirror out at some points, but I definitely was, like, touching and tugging and, like, what are these lips? And, like, a very interesting curiosity with it, but I never took up masturbation for whatever reason, and I don't know that it was because I didn't grow up in, like, an overly conservative home, but it certainly, wasn't something that was ever talked about, so it wasn't really on my radar, almost like a naivety to it. Um, I can say that I maybe accidentally masturbated as a kid, like, would wake up, like, humping on a pillow or something, like it was part of a dream, but I never had the, wherewithal to continue it or to take it farther. I knew it felt good, but, like, I don't know, it was like I didn't have the vocabulary to even know what was next or what was there. So, like, that didn't show up in my life. I didn't grow up with, like, a mom that was, like, a super, like, sexually liberated woman. She actually modeled a lot of, living in coercion around sex, so I recreated that in my first marriage. Um, so I didn't have a relationship with my vulva, not even from a masturbation standpoint, and so, when I came around to this, it was like I was 37 years old, I think, something like that, and it was like, it all stemmed out of, one of my, a person in my life, I won't get into specifics, I don't have their permission to necessarily talk about it. Um, I found that she could, orgasm super, super easy, and it was really, really hard for me, and so my initial push was because I wanted to orgasm easier. And when I figured out I wanted to do that, Betty Dotson fell into my lap. which I
Mm.
think, like, I don't know if I believe in manifesting and all that stuff, but I'm really fucking good at it. Whether it's real or not, I don't know. But, an article about Betty Dodson came across my news feed in May of 2014, and I've never been the same since. Right? She had a lot of the same, like, thought her vulva was ugly. I didn't have a partner that really, like, relished in my vulva. Like, it was one of those, like, I guess maybe, like, I guess I could go down on you. And I didn't really enjoy oral sex because had hangups around my vulva. So, like, it was like he wasn't super into it and I wasn't super into it. So it just wasn't something that ever really bloomed in my life. And I say that word very on purpose because I think of, like, but what do I know about vulvas I didn't know about then, right? Betty Dodson helped me learn that, we need 20 minutes of contact to, like, really turn our vulva on and to make all that erectile tissue erect. And so
Yeah,
a blooming vulva comes to mind, right? And,
like that's
like,
what
yeah, I got to the point with the help of Betty Dodson of, like, I remember the first time I took a picture of my vulva and I could actually say, "Wow, like, I would share this. This is pretty." And I actually did because I had people in my life that were like, "Oh, send me a naughty picture," kind of thing, and I'm like, anything but my vulva would I send because I just I'm like, "Why would you wanna look at that?" And so the first time
mm,
that I took a picture that I was like, "Ooh, look at her. She's pretty." I sent her to everyone. I was like dropping pictures in people's inboxes they were not expecting, like, including girlfriends, and, like, I didn't know Sarah at this point or she would have been first on the list, right? But, it was a big deal, and then the other big deal was the time that I was able to orgasm without a toy. Like, that
mm,
was another big moment that same year where I remember thinking, "Oh, I can be on a deserted island now and still have pleasure." Right?
mm,
I don't I'm not relying on a vibrator, um, as some kind of, like, I don't know that it's important. I don't know that it's a skill that I think everyone should aim for or they're failing. I don't wanna make it sound like that. But for me, it was so empowering to know that I could get myself off. And in that, doubleness of, and I love my vulva and she's pretty and I can look at her with pride and love and, like, joy. It just changed everything in my world, right? The difference between, like, knowing how to touch myself and love myself,
mm.
just huge difference in how I showed up for sex.
So true, so true. I feel the same way. Once I built that relationship, it just sex became so much better and pleasurable and desirable even, it wasn't so painful,
Yeah. You were
just
in
to have
your agency, right?
yeah.
I was listening to a podcast the other day that talked about, the 2 keys to sex or to, mental wellness. How do we keep ourselves in a positive mental health space? And it was, like, gratitude and agency.
Mm,
And I think about I don't have any problem living in gratitude. I mean, I drive down the street here living in San Diego, growing up in Michigan, and I just pinch myself at the beauty that I get to live in every day, and I'm constantly looking for places to have gratitude. That part is not a struggle for me. Agency is something that I did not learn, and I think that's what you were getting at too when you talked about learning about your yes and your no,
yes,
and when
yes.
we have choice. And we're certainly not doing a great job with our children in
Mm,
helping promote agency because it makes parenting more difficult, right? We
yeah,
wanna just teach compliance.
mm, yeah. Yeah, it was really interesting too, like, you were saying how your childhood, your mom wasn't very, like, sexual, and my bio mom was, but my foster families were not. So it's almost like I had it, and then when I was 10, I lost it again, and then I had to
And
relearn.
I imagine when you showed up in that foster family, having what you knew to be normalized, I
Yeah.
imagine it came with a lot of, like, placing shame on you.
Oh my goodness, so much. So much shame. I mean, as we all know, we have shame from like our family, we have shame from society, we have all these layers to shame that hinder us to, or hinder vulva owners to connect with their vulvas. You
Mhm.
know, it's very much like a no-no spot, or save it till you're married, or it's not about your pleasure, it's about his pleasure. Like we get a lot of those messages in our world, and it's not very encouraging, you know?
Yeah, we have this myth that female bodies aren't sexual. Like we're just there for the purpose of the penis owner or something like that. Like we shouldn't own our own pleasure. Heaven forbid we have the audacity to like come into a space and know what we want.
Yeah, right? I mean, back in the day, it was called hysteria, right?
Well, I know somebody who told me that like they had this lover that she would try to explain what she wanted him to do, and he would go, "No, no, no, I know better."
Oh,
What?
oh, me too. I've had that. I had a really wonderful person that, you know, he would do the whole massage thing. He would um he'd want to have sex right away, and then he would eat me out for 3 hours. So I remember specifically asking him, "Can we do the eating out for 3 hours first and then the sex part?" And he's like, baby, you're making me feel like I'm not a man by telling me this." And I'm like, "I'm literally giving you the key to my pussy. I am literally telling you what gets me off, and you're making it about your ego right now? I don't think so." And then he wasn't allowed in my bed anymore.
Yeah, one of the things I do in my work when I work, in a sexual context with people is I really, normalize a few things that I think were missing in my previous marriage, right? There was a competition or a feeling of competition with sex toys, right?
Mhm.
That if I needed to use a vibrator, there was some kind of failing,
Right.
which I want to take that and throw that as far away as I possibly can hurl my magic wand, right? Like, um, it's very rare that a toy doesn't come out at some point in my partnered sex. Like,
Me
it's
too.
very rare that there's not some like, "Hey, grab the" I you know what would make this feel even better right now? Like, it's not about somebody giving you an orgasm. We're co-creating this thing together, and I think personally, I wanna have the best possible experience. Why would I not? And if throwing an orgasm in, throwing a vibrator in, or gosh, we could name a whole bunch of different toys, right? Are you
I mean,
bringing
and
rope to the
like,
space? Are you bringing dildos to the space? Are you bringing um pokey things? Are you bringing soft silky things like sensations, right? They're all just a bunch of different sensations.
right. Right. You know, tools, enhancement tools that we could use in the bedroom, you know, and I don't know why someone's trying to compete with a battery operated thing. I don't know where that came from. But I do know that vulvas, you know, we take longer. We take longer to get engorged. We can take longer to get turned on. It's not like, you know, 10 to 45 seconds we can be hard, you know, like it takes time. It's a beautiful process to build up, and it feels so much better when it's done correctly. And that's what tools are for, you know, that's what toys are for, you know, so our
And
hands
a-
don't get tired.
and you don't, I mean, toys are for everyone.
They're for everyone. We can,
They're for everyone.
literally everyone, every single body I've used toys on, at least the
I
ones
had
I've
a I had a client years ago, which is why I feel safe kind of talking about it here, um, who was an older gentleman who had never had, like, proper sex education, which, to be fair, I'm 47, and I can't say I had proper sex education. But this gentleman I'm guessing in well into their 70s, and so they never had anybody to talk to about sex, and I come in as, you know, the sex positive cuddler, and suddenly I'm the person that they can ask questions to. And we started talking about masturbation because he was questioning if he could masturbate with a soft penis. And I was like, yeah,
Mm,
absolutely. Have you tried like vibrators? And he's like, men can use vibrators? And
yeah.
I was like, let me introduce you to a whole new world. We're going to talk about lubricants and vibrators and like pleasure. Everybody deserves a wide range of pleasure, and the tools we use are whatever feels good to us. Does it feel
Yeah.
good? Do you want more? All right.
Yeah.
Great. Is everybody consenting? Awesome. Run with it. Like,
Exactly.
do whatever works
Exactly.
for you.
One thing I do know for sure is this generation, the generation that's in school now, I've looked up their sex education plan and it is wonderful. Like they talk about pleasure and desire. They talk about different um, ways you can identify, different ways to communicate. I believe that sexual health education has come a long way, even though it's scaring a few people because it's not what they learned growing up. There's a lot of fear that's coming out of it, and I've had a lot of conversations around this recently. But I do appreciate that sexual education is changing some, at least in the U.S. Finally,
Well, probably only in some states. That's my guess,
in
because
some
I
states.
do know that there are some states that you don't even have to have accurate sex education, let alone pleasure-based sex
Yeah,
education. So, I think we live in a bubble of California, which is, you know, a privilege in itself. Some people say, "Do you remember when we were traveling and that one couple was like, 'Oh, you're from California? I'm sorry,' or like something like, 'You're going back to
completely.
California on purpose?' Something," and it was just like, "Oh, I see where we fall in this." Like, that's an interesting statement, but, yeah, I think I have hope. I have hope, and we have great resources. I'll plug Scarlet Teen, is a great place for teens to go get really good sex education that's on the internet, easily available. I know when my kids got to the age of needing some extra education, like, they have a book that I don't know if it was written by the founder or what, but, I was like, "Here's a great book to read," and, like, have any questions, they've always been the kids that would come to me, but I know not everybody has that relationship with their children, but, like, leaving some of these things around for your kids to explore on their own if they need to, is better than nothing. So
And most libraries across, most of the states in the US, they do have a section for sexually healthy developmental books for children.
oh,
So
great.
checking out your local library could be a good asset if you like if you're definitely struggling on how much to teach them at what age.
I
Um,
think a great guide that was said to me is, like, meet them where they are. Like, what kind of question
okay,
are they asking? Don't answer more than they're asking. Like, you don't have to, like, suddenly, give them a whole dissertation and overwhelm them, but meet them where they're at. Like, they'll be ready at different stages for different levels of information.
which is almost the same as us adults, right? We just have to listen to people, see where they're at, and help them grow where they're coming from.
Right. So that brings us to our pussy confidence workshop,
Yeah.
which I often say is like varsity level. Like,
Yes.
you wanna overcome some stuff. This is like the fast track, right? Like, this is like jumping off the cliff and just diving in. Um, Not everybody is always ready for that, and that's why we tried to be really transparent about what happens in our workshop, because some people maybe aren't ready for it, and that's okay too. Also, you don't have to show up at the workshop and turn into a Michelle or a Sarah,
No.
right? I think of, like, who's our target audience? You and I run in the kink and sex positive world, um, but that's not who shows up to our workshops that I think are our target audience. I think our target audience is more so, um, mainstream America that is ready to to take ownership of their pleasure, of their bodies. They want a different relationship with their body, more compassion. So,
I agree.
I think
I
we
agree.
can be, like, inspirational, I suppose, but I don't expect people to come out of our space and be like, "Okay, I'm ready to become a sex educator," or, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's how I found my work was, sitting in Betty Dodson's workshop and looking around the room and saying, "Wow, I wanna help guide people into, like, a healthy relationship to sex and their bodies." But that's not how, most people use this experience. So, like, it's a space to be
Explore.
uncomfortable, I think it's a space to be uncomfortable where there's good scaffolding to support you in that. We're
Yes.
creating a safe enough space to take some risk.
Yes. I agree. Um, is it okay to talk a little bit about how we have it set up, how we have
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
our workshops set up? So we kind of open with the hardest thing, which is shame, and we all share our stories about where our journeys have brought us with shame in our vulvas and where we would like to be, which sometimes could bring up some triggering things for people, or they, even when I talk about my story with the group, it's always sad. I always have this little sad little girl in me that's like, why didn't I get the proper education around this? Um, and it's a beautiful process to figure out where we were and where we would like to be. After we work with shame, we move into a show and tell. Um, and we talk about anatomy and physiology around our vulva, like where our clitoris is, where our urethra opening is, where our vaginal opening is, the whole vulva as a whole. We push our pelvic floor so that we can see all the muscles, and we share this as a group, one by one, in front of each other. And the support and the sounds of women or vulva owners just being like, ooh, ah, wow, feeds all of us in different ways. It's that every vulva is so different, but they're all beautiful feeling.
That's the thing, is like most of us haven't even looked at our own vulva, let alone been in a space where we get to see a dozen vulvas, right?
Yeah,
Like men, I think of like, you know, people with penises socialized as male, they ended up in locker rooms. They have a very different exposure, um normalcy, right?
right.
Where our
Yeah,
genitals are hidden
yeah,
and we don't get a chance to look at them, or we look at them in porn, which is, I think, probably where you got your desire to have your vulva modified,
yeah,
because it didn't look like we're used to looking at. It's unfortunately, most porn is not really inclusive. You can find it. Please go find inclusive porn.
yes,
Find porn that looks like you. Find porn that represents you, like your body, your like what you like. But like all of our vulvas are different. There are no two vulvas that are the same. And I love that ooh and ah of like we kind of get lost, like we're in an art gallery, right?
right.
And each vulva is a new painting, and we get to like with like no judgment, like it's all a celebration of like,
So,
wow, you're willing to share your vulva with us. Thank you so much. What a lovely gift. And you get, the person showing their vulva gets this feedback, this mirroring of appreciation, awe, love, that we're putting towards that person's vulva that is on display to like help us all like grow and love ourselves, love our sisters.
that's one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. Is just
That's the community part, because like you could do this work with either one of us one-on-one, right? You don't have to come to a group event to really, you can dive into this in one-on-one coaching, you can,
yeah,
but there is something that you cannot get in one-on-one coaching, which is the community aspect of it. And I
yeah,
think that is such a, from what I took away from it when I did the workshop with Betty in 2014, was one of my takeaways was, wow, I have not been investing in my female relationships nearly enough. And I need more of this in my life. Not this as in like, I need to sit around naked, show my vulva to my friends and masturbate together, though I'm not opposed to it. What I really took away was this need to build and prioritize my female relationships, because I did not do that historically. And it was in that space that I made a declaration that I was going to work on my female relationships.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful.
It brings up feelings
So
for
good.
me because now I look at my world like when I growing up in high school, I was like, my friends were guys primarily. Women weren't to be trusted. I had just kind of this. My father really promoted competition in my household, and it was an all women's household. Like I had three sisters and my mom, and then my dad. And he loved to be the stirrer of the pot, and have us all in competition with each other all the time. So in that space, it was like this realization that I need to let women into my life. And now I look at my friend circle and it's flipped, right? I have
Everybody-
plenty of male friends and non-binary friends and female friends. It's a cornucopia of of like just authentic, real people. And it's just shifted and it started in that spot where I was just like, I need women.
Mm, yes, I agree. I agree. My relationships definitely got better with women around me once I started building a better relationship with my vulva. And I do feel like society in general kind of pits women against each other in that competition. Like it's not just in their like your family circle. I feel like that's how you were exposed. But I do feel like in general, women are not. It's very much like, oh, she has bigger boobs than me, or her hair is whatever, straight and blonde, or she has blue eyes and I don't like her. And it's not like real connection with humans. It's just strictly what someone looks like and what we don't have. And then it's like this whole competition thing.
Yeah, like it's a competition for resources, but I think society has shifted. We're not looking for necessarily our knight in shining armor to
No.
come whisk us away and take care of us. Like I want a partnership, not a um parentship. I would call like my previous marriage was like a parentship. Like yeah, it's a relationship, but I'm being parented in a lot of ways. And that would not fly now. Like, I think
Right.
about I
Well,
have
girls.
I have I have panic dreams sometimes. I just had one the other night where I woke up heart racing because and all I can remember is this feeling of lack of agency from my past life, right? From
Mm,
Michelle 1.0. And it stirs up a lot of anxious feelings in me when I think back to that time because it is such a night and day difference from what my life is like now. And it all goes back to this
I
journey
mean, a
with
lot of it,
myself.
right? A lot of it's like when you leave the nest, right? When you leave your parents' house, you're gonna look for what you know, and that's what your parents had, or what your
Mhm.
family system um, showed you growing up. And I feel like a lot of times it's not what we really want, and we don't really know our authentic selves. We're still conditioned in what our parents have shown us. We don't know much more outside of that,
Well, our
until we
nervous
educate
system
ourselves.
yeah, our nervous system looks for that. Like, I remember getting into this relationship I'm in now, and it was so calm that I didn't think he loved me
Mm,
because it wasn't in constant chaos and reactivity. Like reactivity wasn't there. And if you're not reacting in some violent or loud way, my body was like, this dude doesn't care.
mm. Yes,
So
I've
like
experienced the same thing.
yeah.
I
Anyways,
would
I
like to
kind
think.
of glossed over the masturbation part. Let's go back to the workshop. So the last major component, right, is that then we teach like there's something really empowering about being an orgasmic woman. Right? We there is a lot of power in a female orgasm. And I remember reading Vagina, the new biography. I
Oh
think
yes,
you might still have my copy. I don't
I
know.
do.
Um, but this conversation in there about like tapping down female erotic empowerment is a lot about keeping control, right? And an orgasmic woman is not very controllable.
True.
And so while I don't like to say that sex is about getting to orgasm, I do think that learning how to tap into what feels good, even if it doesn't get you to orgasm, right?
Yeah.
Just being
Yeah.
able to identify in the moment what feels good to me right now and really connecting to our bodies is really, really important. And so we get to share some time together where we talk about Betty's rock and roll method, which is, I guess there's some science that this is one of the most successful methods of teaching masturbation. I guess I did a study. I wish I should have flagged the where I saw this written. Um, but it's certainly my favorite method to teach, and so we give some tips and tricks on how to connect with your vulva in a pleasurable way. Sarah's got her own little, extras to add.
Yeah.
Um,
I
Sarah's
like to
really
like from
good
hand
with,
techniques and like how to put it. So some people think that the clitoris is this little tiny bean and that's it. They don't realize that it has arms that go down the outer labia, and it's like a whole system in there, and the bulbs get full, and when you get fully engorged, and it becomes sensitive, and you can play down the lips. Like it's not just the little clit that you see on the outside. So I like to show like how to like do some tapping techniques, how to stroke like up and down. You could do like a zigzag technique. There's so many different ways to bring pleasure to the vulva. And I like to share the hand side too.
yeah, because I think what we don't know what we don't know, right? And
Right,
if you've never sat down and like, it's kind of like you got to map your vulva, right? You've
right.
got to do some body mapping and what touch feels good. Do you like light touch? Do you like harder touch? Do you like a certain speed or pace? And I think that we get in this idea of like we just need it to be fast. Like we're
Mm,
competing with the penises in our life that can be ready to go and sometimes orgasm faster than we would like them to, and we're holding ourselves to this standard that I think, I can get off really fucking fast if you give me a magic wand.
yeah.
If it's just about the getting it off, doing the thing, I can do that. And somebody said to me one time, so I have this vibrator that tracks your orgasm, like it graphs it out. It's called the Lioness. If you're a geeky person, you probably would really love seeing a graph of your orgasm. And I remember sending it to one of my friends, and she said, you got off that fast? Teach me your ways." And I said, "I would never recommend this. This is not quality. This is, yes, I can create an orgasm relatively quickly, but it's not the same as having a good build up, and like it's like it's like I don't know. I don't even
Well,
know
it's
what
like
to compare it
kind of
to."
like we were talking about before, right? Like when you're not fully engorged, you can still get off, but it's not as pleasurable. Like when you slowly build up and you build up, it's almost like that tease and denial thing. You build up, you build up, you build up, and then when you explode, it feels really good as opposed to just exploding. you
Yeah.
know just like sometimes I do that quick like stress, like, oh, I just need to get off really quick. Done, like 10 seconds. And then other times I take myself on a date for 2 hours. I'll like light candles, make a nice dinner. I like stroke my whole body, and then I'll touch my vulva like after an hour of touching the rest of my body. Like I just want to connect with all parts of me and see what feels good and what does send blood to my cunt.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
I'm
where-
the opposite. Like, I hear Sarah tell these stories of, like, making love to herself, and I'm like, "That's not how I masturbate." I masturbate usually to fall asleep or, to relieve anxiety, but here's the thing, I still this practice of learning to masturbate changed my partnered sex. And my preference is partnered sex, and I love the energy exchange of partnered sex. And also, I have this weird thing called aphantasia where I don't see pictures in my head, so fantasy doesn't really do it for me. So to get in the full masturbation mood, I probably got to pull out some porn, which is fine. Like I don't have any issue with that, but it's just I think for me, learning to masturbate and taught me how to ask for what I needed touch wise. And
Yes.
so whether you're going to turn into this, I can make love to myself for hours, or it's just a matter of being better at partnered sex, I
Yeah.
think it's something that is empowering. And I am all about empowering people of all genders, but this is a space where I get to come in contact more with people with vulvas, which my one-on-one work tends to be a lot of penis owners. So this offering this workshop is not my main thing in life, like the thing I mainly work on, but it's the thing that changed my life and got me to where I am, and I want to pay that forward. And so here's an opportunity for those in Southern California to get some of that benefit of our experience. It's not the same as going to like a body sex workshop. They do it differently. We say it's inspired by Betty Dodson's work. We do it in a 1-day offering. It's not a 2-day offering like the traditional body sex is, but it's I'd say, it hits all the marks as far as it has the core. The core is still there. The heart of it is still there. It's just funny. Sarah and I talk about how it's evolved over the years because of my work has evolved. And so I come with different information than I used to come with to these workshops. Um, Sarah shows up differently than she used to show up in these workshops. We've just grown as people.
Yeah, and I do think as we grow, we bring that into the space. The more knowledge we have and the more techniques we learn and things that really move us, we could be like, hey, how can we add this in? Let's change this one thing. And, we just shift it a little bit so that it fits to our lives and what we've learned and what we can offer to people.
Yeah. Oh, and it's just it's nice to become comfortable being in space with nudity. Like I
Oh,
think that's really empowering for people is to get out of their comfort zone around nudity and how quickly it doesn't it doesn't isn't as noticeable for them. They're like it kind of fades away. At first it's like that, oh
yeah.
no.
The fear. It's like, oh, I got to get naked in front of people. What are they going to think? What am I going to think?
Yeah.
But I do think that being in a textile free space, it almost sheds a layer of judgment. Like you're not like, oh, look at what they're wearing. Oh, that fits this way or this that way. No, it's just really natural bodies and who people are, and you just don't judge them the same way when they're naked. You just don't.
Well, we're not just like clothing naked. We're a bit emotionally naked.
Oh yes, it's
Yeah.
very vulnerable
And very bonding.
and very bonding.
Hence why I left my first one going, I need more women in my life because I did feel incredibly bonded to the people in that space.
Yes,
And yeah.
yeah,
So,
that connection. The women that or the vulva owners in the space seem to all build a strong connection,
yeah.
exploring together.
Yeah. So we keep popping back and forth between vulva owners and women as terminology. I just want to like make some clarity. Our general audience is cis women. Like that's pretty standard. We are open to vulva owners in general, but know that it's a space that is pretty cis-centered just because that's who we are. We come into the spaces um, two white cis women um, of varying orientations, right? I think we're both like I don't know if we were going to identify ourselves like what are the labels that I carry? I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm an aunt, I'm um I identify as a queer person. I am I mainly identify as a dominant in the kink world. I tend to like to top is where I like to land in that world. I'm a non-monogamous person with heavy monogamy leanings. Like there's all these different labels that we carry. And I also happen to have a vulva.
Yes.
And if you have any questions on whether you belong in that space or not, please reach out and ask one of us. This is not a space for penis owners. You don't have to identify as a woman, but have a vulva. You would be welcome in this space.
Yes.
So, questions, ask them.
Yes, please.
Yes. What else do they need to know? We have a workshop coming up in October on the 14th from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. In San Diego. And you can find out information at anuntamedlife.com. Sara, where can people find you if they are interested in any of the work that you do, whether they want to check out your art or work with you one-on-one
I offer so
or
many things.
so many things? Where can they find you?
psexperienceu.com. It'll have
That's
all
your
my
new
information.
website.
My new website. It's finally done.
And it'll be
It'll
in the
have
show
everything.
notes.
It'll have all my creating stuff, art. I do regular fine art. I do mirror art. I do erotic art. Pussy confidence stuff is on there. That will also take you straight to an untamed life. I do healing work, touch work. Everything's on there. You can find all the offerings.
I just had something fall off my desk. I don't know how that will hit the recording. Awesome. And it's kind of like your umbrella site. Like I have meetmichellerenee.com. Well,
Yes.
is like a starting point, and then it will direct you to wherever you need to find the pertinent information that you're looking for.
Yes.
Cool. Well, we have limited tickets, so don't hold off because I don't know when we'll do this again, right? We kind of throw this out there every once in a while, and you're about to go traveling.
Yes. I'm going to travel the U.S.
So
all
you
over.
could technically do a pop-up pussy confidence somewhere, but for now we know we're going to be in San Diego in October. If you are somewhere else in the world and you're like, I would really love to bring this to my community, and you want to help coordinate it could be something that we could bring to you.
Yeah, we can show up for that.
Yeah. It's open to discussion. So, all right. Is there anything last that you'd like to add that we haven't covered that you would feel terrible if we signed off and you're like, oh, this one thing we didn't touch on it?
No, I think we hit all the points. I mean, I know this could be a little scary to jump into to do this type of work, but I do believe it's very empowering, and I do believe it can bring confidence into your life.
Yeah. Not just in the bedroom either.
No, everywhere.
Yeah. We're definitely different people.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what makes it beautiful. No one's the same.
Yeah. I sometimes think everybody should just send their young daughters to me, but then I'm like, I don't know at what age that would be appropriate to like expose them to me. Like I joke with my sisters that, when your daughters are of the age where you feel like they can handle like really open, honest conversation, let me know, because I've learned a lot. I've learned a ton, especially in the last 8 years of my life, that I would love to share because I wish I'd known these things when I was a teen.
Yeah, me too. Oh my goodness, me too. My life would be so different.
Yeah. I try not to have regrets because it got me to where I'm at. It really helps me have passion for what I do. But yeah, it would be a very different trajectory. We're doing generational healing work. Sara is the space that we're holding in this workshop is generational healing.
Yes.
And it's important. So thanks for listening to us. I'll have Sara back if she gets comfortable with if she's like, yes, I love doing this. Sara and I will be back together on this podcast at some point. All right.
Yeah, this was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. Thank you for joining us. If you'd like to comment, pose a question, or learn more about the guest often featured on the show, Visit us at intimacylabpodcast.com. Please also take a moment to review us on your favorite podcast app. It's one of the best ways to show your support. As for me, you can find out more about my work at meetmichellerenee.com, as well as on most social medias at meetmichellerenee. Let's connect again soon.